What is up, YouTube, and welcome to this Thor Love and Thunder spoiler review. Full disclosure, I was very lucky enough to be invited to a multimedia screening in London, and I will try to be as unbiased as possible, but I thought that you do deserve to know that, well, that happened. My initial thoughts out of the cinema reactions were that I absolutely had a blast. I love the action, the emotion, the humour, and my god, the soundtrack. I'm a huge rock fan, and Guns N' Roses are easily in my top favourite bands of all time. Now, the Guardians are also one of my favourite parts of the MCU, and I think they made a huge win shifting Thor to more of a comedy. Thor 1 and 2, in my opinion, were very, very dull, despite having a lot of potential, and I think that Ragnarok was superb, despite the comedy at times being a bit out of place. That said, I did have problems with the movie, but as a whole, I actually enjoyed it. I was entertained, which is what movies are there for in a way, but not everyone likes every part, do they? It opens with the Guardians who ask Thor for help on one more mission in a thrilling battle soundtracked by Guns N' Roses. The Guardians are swiftly shipped off, and while I hoped for an As Guardians of the Galaxy movie after Endgame, them going off and letting Thor do his own thing was good. Otherwise, this movie would be even more crowded than it already was. However, the movie does admittedly become crowded, like I said, as they have the Gore storyline from Thor God of Thunder, the mighty Thor storyline of Jane becoming Thor, as well as Valkyrie being king. Now, I loved Tessa Thompson in this movie, and, well, I feel like the movie telling all these stories led to her as being king was so underserved. Her being disinterested in the trailer of the everyday king activities was brushed aside as she went on to help defeat Gore. I think it was in Game of Thrones where one of the characters became king and then was bored of everything. I think it was the Baratheon king there. Her chemistry with Natalie Portman was superb, and it made me really wish that Disney maybe, just maybe, took a huge risk and did a Jane Foster Thor solo movie featuring Valkyrie. In the comics, Jane became Thor as Thor Odinson became unworthy, and Heimdall and the Hammer did choose her. Now, Jane Foster as Thor is beyond controversial, as admittedly it was confusing at the time when the comic came out. I was not reading Thor, and here we flash back to Jane and Thor's relationship breakdown, and he asked Mjolnir to look after her, which it actually did, and it protected her from the cancer, but it didn't stop the cancer, it just allowed her to have the power of Thor, which ended up stopping the chemotherapy which was going on, because if you didn't know what it is, chemotherapy kind of poisons you and poisons the tumour in your body to get rid of it, but, well, that's all well and good, but the Mjolnir destroyed what it thought was invading, but I won't get too much in the nitty and gritty. I think the film nailed that, and Natalie Portman is just absolutely brilliant as the mighty Thor. And I loved how the story of Odinson not only having to deal with his ex-love of his life, but his OG hammer was hilarious. The visual comedy of Stormbreaker getting jealous was so stupid and so funny. I had a great time. I didn't expect them to do the full Jane becoming Thor and the death of Jane Foster storyline, but it was handled expertly, and I really want more of her. Natalie Portman having time to act, as opposed to having less and less time on screen, was great, as, well, obviously she's a great actress, and you can really tell that all of the cast have fun, especially Chris Hemsworth, when he was in Ragnarok, he was having so much fun. I will admit that her story did feel very, very rushed, but what we got was still good, and maybe she will come back as a Valkyrie like the comics. Talking of stripped down stories, Gore was easily the creepiest and scariest MCU villain, and Bale is disturbing. The opening is pretty much the same as the comics. For his family and people almost died, and he found a necro sword, which turned out to be Null, which was the leader of the symbiotes, and so very, very much, which they probably won't tell as, or well, at least in the MCU, but maybe they'll do it with the Sony Pictures and butcher it like Morbius, and they're probably going to do it with Craven. The movie I thought was better for this story, which did get convoluted in the end with time travel, 3 Thors, Thor's daughters, and here it was distilled into a pretty compelling narrative. I would have liked more of Gore and him interacting with Hemsworth Thor. I would have liked when the kids are in that like cage thing. If he met Gore once more there, I think it would have added a bit more to the story. If I had to distill my issues into, well, issues, I would say that it was incredibly crowded and the movie at times was far too simplistic. Russell Crowe was something I was very looking forward to as Zeus, but Crowe as Zeus misfired for me on nearly every level. The accent is borderline offensive, the theatrics, etc. It was cringe. It just felt ridiculous. I get he's supposed to be a god who doesn't care about the people they're supposed to protect, but the dancing and such was wildly cringy and an absolute waste of Crowe's acting ability. The last movie I saw Russell Crowe in, it was a movie where he was like chasing this woman down. It was sort of like Falling Down, but the guy was absolutely nuts. Can't remember the name of it off the top of my head. I've written a script. This is an ad lib, but if you've got to watch it. It's actually really, really good. I did a video on my channel on it. I can't fault the action here in the chamber, as it was stellar. Once the crew went to get Zeus's weapon and fought, but the hardcore Henry-style camera of the face of Korg was weak, and it showed that Disney they do not want to take any risks with a fan favourite character. He's returned after just kill him off. While the comic Gore took young gods to use to build a god bomb, here he wanted to get eternity to ask for, well, the end of all gods. I actually thought this was really cool, but the taking of the young Asgardians wasn't an issue until Thor was just laughing and joking with them, despite Gore being absolutely terrifying. The Bifrost being the key to eternity felt so ridiculously convenient, but finally seeing a cosmic being like eternity was damned cool, as seeing that being just looked beautifully terrifying. And eternity in the new Ultimates, the one with Carol Danvers and that, was one of my favourite cosmic stories. The fight in the chamber is easily one of my favourites of all time, despite the kids getting powers, was a bit cringe at times. I feel like they should have just been removed. Maybe Heimdall's son could have stayed. I really like the look of the actual where eternity was with the water, and it reminded me of the fight with Shadow Link in Ocarina of Time, and is a less orangey yellow version of the Soul World in Infinity War. Overall, I thought the movie was good. I had a good time, but it had the problems that Phase 4 has, with it not only being less connected, with Darcy not even mentioning the events of WandaVision, and no idea where the phase is going, except possibly Jane returning as Valkyrie, Hercules appearing fighting Thor, which is a good plot in the comics. But I do appreciate they didn't rely on the cameos, which can feel a bit pointless at times, an absolute cameo fest. But the post-credit scene is interesting. I wasn't expecting Brett Goldstein to be Hercules, something I didn't know I wanted until I saw it. He's absolutely brilliant as Roy Kent, which I've absolutely butchered. I might cut that, probably won't. But it was a decent movie, and I am aware that I am incredibly nitpicking it. I am someone who has always said that if you're entertained by a bad movie, you had a good time. And I was entertained, but there could have been more. Overall, I'm going to give it a 7 out of 10. But that is it for this video. I might do an Easter egg video at some point, but I need to see the movie again. I was way too hopped up on McDonald's. I went to McDonald's before in Leicester Square. But yeah, let me know what you think down below in the comments. Hit the like if you want more from us, and I'll see you soon, and goodbye.